on SPX. We're sitting right around 74.75 at the moment, which definitely is going to make things a little bit difficult to trade the RTH session today after an 80-point gap up and really heavy resistance at 7,500. So it definitely favors uh, chop or consolidation and retracement of some of the gap. Um, Unless we really just blow through 7,500, then likely the conditions favor choppy consolidation, at least inside the overnight range, if not back into Friday's range. But what I will say is that holding above this kind of 74, 75 area, could lead to a 7,500 test early in the session. And then we go from there. Likely some sort of rejection. If you're able to clear 7,500, then we could see a trend day up and see a lot of consolidation. But at the moment, just need to be aware that a lot of individual names have gapped up. The market gapped up 1% from Friday's close. So that really makes the beginning of the session harder. A lot of times, things need time to digest or consolidate after the gap up. And you may see a few names that just try to gap and go. But playing opening drives after this overnight move is a lot harder. So the main areas to I'll be watching as far as gamma positioning. 7450 and 7500 are the main areas. So that's probably the range for the early part of the session, and then 7475 is a pivot right in the middle. So the best longs probably would be around 7450, which would also be a sweep of the overnight low. And then the best short, I think, is 7500, at least on the first test. I think it's worth a short. And then if we're able to clear it after that, then you probably do not want to be short, and we could try for a trend day up. Otherwise, uh, my guess would be consolidation inside 7450 to 7500.
Yeah, great plan. Thank you. 75 that you talked about is the 50-day moving average, kind of pinned there. Actually, we have a multiple moving averages on the higher time frames, kind of grouping right here. So it's quite a lot of resistance, but also some support if you could trade above it. Just if I may, before Matei steps in, just want to call out the week ahead a little bit because it's Monday. It's a pretty big week. I think it's one of the kind of where I consider like earnings report kind of quarter starting for real. We have a lot of big names, you know, really kicking this off. Just gonna skip most, but just mention a few. Alphabet. Um, no, this is the old week. This is the last week I'm looking at. I apologize. Give me a second here. Thought I had
It's
the right
You
Microsoft
go in
Meta.
commentary or something. Sorry.
Yeah, Microsoft Meta Wednesday, and
Yeah,
then
there it is.
Amazon
Yeah,
Apple
yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah, as I was talking, I was looking at the picture I had. And I was like, this doesn't look good. I had a few like larger names there, but yeah, Boeing tomorrow as well. We have Apple, Amazon on Thursday, and like you said, Microsoft Meta on Wednesday. So that's a big deal. And then also on Wednesday we do have FOMC. So just something to kind of look ahead to. So now that's over. Matei, kick it off, sir.
Sir. Main focus is on Apple this morning. So there's, we kind of mentioned this. A lot of names looked through yesterday, and it wasn't easy to find setups. I was just calling that out. I think once we get through some of these earnings, as Space Monkey mentioned, we should have a bit of a tone setter week the next couple of weeks. I think we'll get a lot more opportunity to start off the week, though. Not a ton that really stands out. I do like Apple quite a bit, though. I actually like that it's not gapping above that high. So obviously, market pretty big gap up. This is feels a little held back from that high, which is interesting. It's been, leader in the market, and then we're just kind of pinned right below that all-time high. So to me, it's kind of like a more or less like a pressure cooker trade, as there's that fight between, okay, is this relatively weak, or why is it not breaking out, gapping up with the market? And then on the open, if it breaks through and just runs immediately, it will create chasers. So pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to evaluate here other than it being a leader, all-time high breakout. kind of pinned in the pre-market below that all-time high. The R vol is actually good. It's elevated here. So that tells me that there is activity below this high, even though we haven't broken it. So pretty simple. Looking to take a break. I do like the fact that we have zero DTE available, so we don't have to worry about earnings on Thursday in terms of the premiums. And yeah, so looking at the 340 calls, you could see a bit of a run up into earnings. If this fails 335, most likely gets caught in some consolidation or potentially a bigger fade. But I would rather look at fades below 329. Anything above that to me is more or less a constructive pullback. The only thing I'd also add this morning is we do have single stock futures coming out starting today. So not entirely sure how that's going to affect everything, but something to be aware of, something that we're as a group looking at and watching pretty closely. So that's all I got for you. You're on mute, monkey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just about to say that was a really good one. I think it's the one that stands out to me. I also had a really hard time this morning, kind of pointing things out or picking kind of names out of this basket. Well, really nice continuation play after that really big day on Friday. So yeah, I would watch also if we back us at 333. I'd be willing to maybe see if we can get that turn. I like zero DTE because earnings ahead, zero DTE could be um, a cheap way of participating in this play. So yeah, I mean, I really feel like this is the only one to watch today. Um, but let's go through some of the other names that they added to the list here. Um, we do have Hood on the list here, and let me just zoom out. Uh, so 98 calls above 96.50. This one does have earnings coming up in a couple days, so just keep that in mind. What's good about what happened on Friday is that I guess we're holding above the 50 here now, the 50 day, and we're holding where the kind of support was on Friday. And so if we could continue holding that, this could turn and push into earnings maybe after this like little rinse we've had. So more of a tactical play, I think. Hood 98 calls above
Yeah,
9650.
I
No,
would just add Space Monkey. This is a little bit less conventional of a setup that we would normally look, but I was just looking at that double bottom off 93, and it's sort of pinched between the 50 and 200 day
mm-hmm.
ahead of earnings, which you pretty much highlighted, but a little bit of a different type of play.
There goes stuff. Yeah, so DE says Deere and Company. A really strong day on Friday, and what I would say is that this one has been in a larger range for a while. And what I would watch is that trend line on the daily or the weekly above that goes from those all-time highs. And yeah, I think if you could see that continuation play, which I think you're pointing to above 629. So if you can hold Friday highs and start pushing, a really good target would be that like that 640 area. So if we break above 640, we can see that bigger move. Next would be Uber. Um, Watching that continuation to the downside, I believe they had some sort of negative headline uh, on Friday that pushed it lower. But looking across multiple days, it's just been getting weaker and weaker, and now it's one-time framing to the downside and breaking that pivot from beginning of June. But yeah, if we break the lows of Friday, I think this one could keep pushing at least towards that 60 area. Next would be Netflix. I actually like this one a lot. Context here would be that we gap down on earnings and it has yet to make a new low since. It has been trading higher lows pretty much, and for now it's above 70. And we've talked about the 70 being important in the past, and we closed right above that 70, and we're seeing us gapping up slightly here towards the Friday highs. Uh, so there is a nice gap above that could allow us to push higher here. There is an area which I would call out, which would be the 71 well, 78 point, like 90, let's just say 71. That's the low from a few weeks ago, kind of June 25 or so, where we bottomed and we bounced. So if you can recover that, we could. I think that adds to the odds of us filling the gap above. So yeah, I like Netflix earnings behind us, and it's making a nice little comeback here. It's struggling a little bit, uh, which I don't love. So higher time frame. If you see a gap down, you see this really big kind of rebound where you have multiple days. It just kind of filling that gap immediately. That's where I feel more confident, like playing that continuation to the upside. This is struggling, but it's still doing what it needs to, and it's showing some relative strength. So to the overall market, so worth a watch for sure, especially in this tape. All right, that's all we have. Sarang, you're up next, sir. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, even I go, Mate. I don't see much of trading, but out of all the names, I like Google as a small trade. Google, if you look at it, the earning day one high was around 120, sorry, 323, and we are just gapping around the earning day one high. So what I'm watching is above 324 to 325. So I'll look for maybe 328 and 3 something around 328 to 330 area to my price target. So I think that's the only one. It has a good pre-market structure, but on a higher time frame we don't have good alignment. So only thing is, I think 321 322 area is the 200 day SMA. So it's trying to reclaim. So that's what I'm watching Google. And there is some news on like Nvidia is looking to invest, I think, to 50 billion in infrastructure. So what I'll be watching is CoreView and NPIS. So both are not reacting much to the news, but let's see if we get some late reaction to those. So NBIS 200 is a defined level. So if we reclaim 200 and hold on the tips, so we'll keep an eye on it. So no definitive plan, but yeah, we'll watch some intraday setup on these two. And I think there is a news on SK Hynix also, like some partnership with Nvidia. So news is not looking strong, but the stock is gapping up 5%, but still in the previous day range. So let's see how we react. So I think I like above 166. Uh, yeah, or maybe a trap below 160 and reclaim. So that's what I'm watching on SK Hynix. But to be honest, I don't see much to trade today. Just will be sizing very small on all my trades.
All right. Thank you, Sarang, very
Yeah.
much. If I can just mention that we do have some strength in banks. I saw them. It's hard to find a trade here. So one of my favorites, and which a name that we talked about last week was JPM, for example. Right, we were watching that 350. It broke it nicely on Friday, closed near highs, and we're seeing a very nice gap up here, trading around 357. So I don't see a trade here, but it's worth watching an intraday setup maybe. GS as well, and these often show strength into FOMC week or FOMC day. I guess you sometimes see these bid on these banks. So just kind of put that forward, right? Which kind of keep an eye on these. GS is another one, just in a harder range here. It's hard for me to see a trade, but worth a mention. All right. We do have about 9 minutes to go, so I'm going to spend about 5 minutes um, kind of going through some of the names that you guys want us to take a look at. Start with Microsoft. So Microsoft's obviously one of those that have earnings in a couple of days. It is doing its best holding on here. I don't see a trade at all. I think this is worth waiting after earnings and readjusting and see what happens. But for now, it's kind of a harder trade. HWM, actually, I have this in my watch list. I just never traded it. Options on them. It's a nice call out. Higher time frame, it's looking pretty good. Higher lows, higher highs. Just kind of trading in a channel. Nothing fantastic. It does also have earnings in the beginning of August. But yeah, this is strengthening. I think what's worked with this one is just finding intraday setups. PBR. This one is hard to trade. It's gapping down, so I think it's oil related, right? So obviously, the oil market has been gapping down. So you can go and look at USO, for example. It's gapping down quite significantly. It's because of what's happening in the Middle East. Um, so I don't really have anything to say about PBR. I think this one is a harder like trade for us day traders. So for me, it's hands off. Ford. Yeah, this is nice. Last time I kept an eye on Ford, I think I was messaging Sarang about that 15 level, and I'm talking back in May, and then it finally broke that 15, and I saw a huge move towards like 18, and then they got sold into. Um, so I think it's a harder trade here. I think if we can move back above 15, you might see a little bit easier of a trade, but once again, it's not a name that I like to trade or day trade at least. NOW. So the interesting thing with NOW is that it did gap down. Sorry, it did gap up, I believe, on earnings. Hold on, let's see. Yes, it was like, sorry, it was above that 100, and it got sold into heavily. And we saw a nice little day on Friday. So it's still kind of up in the air what's going to happen here. What I could say is that the sellers are getting absorbed. We're back above 100, so it could be worth a watch. They keep protecting that 90 area, so one to watch for sure. BE near the 200-day, failed breakdown or flush. Yeah, I mean that's the exact play I would watch. The only thing I would call out with BE is that it's in a heavy downtrend, and that Friday candle is more of a kind of buyers, just quitting, right? That's why we got this huge move to the downside. So I'm favoring a continuation move on this one. Now, the only thing I would call out is that the 200-day is right there. It's it's at 176. So if you break Friday lows around 183, the risk reward is what it is. It could be a very heavy kind of downside move, which could break the 200, and you can see a bigger move. What I would say is like wait for that 200 to break, because the 200 sits right above that bounce area on the daily, which we had back in January, February, and then we broke out of. So if we break below the 200, break back into that previous bounce area, you can see a traversal of that bounce area all the way down to 133. So it's a harder trade. It's just a lot of things going on here. And additionally, Cheeky's calling it out as earnings coming up. So doubting they're going to just let it go before earnings, but we'll see. Yeah, Chucky. So MU is it's gapping up. For me right now with MU, I would, if it could hold Friday lows, I would expect this to push towards 1,000. Break of 1,000 is, I think, the better play. So I don't think this is much in play in terms of like big picture. I think intraday you're able to kind of tactically trade this, buy dips and stuff. So I would use that 900 Friday lows as a little bit of a pivot today, and then 1,000. So we're kind of in a range here. So I don't have any other insights aside from that. I do think the SNDK is looking very heavy here. It's an attempt on Thursday and Friday to kind of push above the 9-day. We're back below it, so we're just creating these lower highs throughout. Okay. And lastly, here, guys, snow. Snow looks good, Dr. G. Yeah, snow looks good. It's the last 2 weeks it's just done very low, but it is holding. So software is an area of the market to watch, I think, because when they have been showing strength, they have been providing us with some really good opportunities. And I would pivot to some of the other names that we talked about. And I think that's it because I got to get myself ready, guys. Sorry. Ask me for any other names throughout the session. I'll be happy to take a look at it. All right. All right. Google pushing higher. Come on, Apple. Apple's moving higher here towards that 335. We do have less than 2 minutes to go. And worth mentioning that aside from everything that we've talked about, it is end of month as well. So it's coming up.
Great. Apple pushing up here into that 335. Any focus outside of Apple? Assuming not really.
No, not really. Do like Google's firming up here. I like what Sarang said about it. I think standing out to
What? SPX, Google, and Apple.
me. Apple's right at all-time highs, guys. Q's looking pretty weak too, near lows here. Microsoft pushing higher. Gee, what was that? Google, huge move.
That's some 337.50 calls on Apple. Apple here on that dip. See if it can hold. We want to see a hold 335. If not, just be a quicker cut. ETR is 341 on Apple.
Right at that 75 area on SPX. Right below the 50-day moving average, so which is resistance at this point.
a quarter Apple here. Nice push into the highs.
Semis getting sold off. Some Nvidia. ES breaking overnight lows and 7,500. Huge relative strength in Apple. Netflix backed, I think, 70. Needs to bounce here, 65 by 74.50, likely on SPX. Apple does have some resistance at 338-ish. 341 ATR above. Google coming back nicely here. They got sold into that first pop and now trying to squeeze higher into that gap above. Looks like they want it to move towards that 331 plus 1 ATR. Google. SPX held where it needed to and now turning higher.
Yeah, if it can clear 75, it can try for that 7,500.
7,500 for me right now is a really good short. Okay, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I'll for sure give it a chance on the first test.
Calls, right? Apple looks like it's
Definitely.
losing some steam here. Very good.
Here. Watching Google 330s.
All out Apple here.
Guys, I got in at 129, 330 calls.
Pretty big comeback there on Apple. Might be a little bit of a trap. It's trying to hold that 335, but I'll stay flat for now. Google, right? Pretty. Watching the second attempt here on Apple. I like the way it's holding up, but let's see how this bar develops for just a minute here. First, it's 335 keeps holding. Technically held the opening 5-minute low. Gonna take a second attempt on Apple here, guys. If we break the opening print low, just get out real quick.
Google back to the highs.
Pretty thin below 74.70 on SPX if we fail here again.